Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of What Covent Garden. This is our new series of Saturday specials, and because you guys asked, I'm going to show you some basic knife skills. Now, Chinese food and Asian food, I always say, is 90% preparation, 10% cooking. And 90% of the 90% of preparation is all about how good you are with your knife. During this series, I'm going to show you how to use your knife correctly and, most importantly, safely. And then how to chop your vegetables the right way, fillet your fish the right way, and slice meat really nice and thinly. Welcome to the second episode of our Knife Skills series. This episode is all about slicing and dicing, and I'm going to use just vegetables for this to show you how we get that really fine slices, matchsticks and dices of veg. Always start with ginger, garlic and spring onion for Chinese cooking. I'm actually going to make a chili oil out of all my finely chopped up bits of veg here. So I want a fair amount of each one of those ingredients. Now, if you haven't seen any of our videos before, you probably wouldn't have noticed this, but the easiest way to peel your ginger is actually with a teaspoon. And that is because you can get into all the cracks and crevices, and you don't sort of lose any excess bits of ginger. No waste there. And if you have watched the first episode of the series, that you know that the cleaver is great for picking things up, and so long as you push your thumb down firm on the actual blade, then you can just push everything onto the knife without cutting yourself. Now, it's also, I'd recommend always to have a mixing bowl nearby, so you don't have to keep going back and forth to the bin. That's your bin, and you can just throw everything away at the right time at the end. Next up, my crab. I'm going to get back to the crab because this is really important. I want everything to be really finely sliced, finely matchsticks or finely diced, and we get there from the crab. 3 fingers in the middle, my front legs, little finger and my thumb on my back legs. I cover this in a lot more detail in the first episode of the series, so watch back at that if you haven't seen it already. Now I'm going to just hold my knife ahead of what I'm slicing into. And this here is a slice, not a chopping mechanism. So push down and forwards and you slice through. Once you've got your slice, then you can go with nice fine slices. Down and forwards, always close the gap between the knife or the blade and the board. So down and forwards, push down and push forwards. Down and forwards, and you can see that I'm pushing that down and forwards and getting nice fine slices of ginger. Once I get sort of halfway through, it could get a bit wobbly or you kind of feel like you're losing space. So just push that piece of ginger over so you're a little bit more stable, and you can see now that my crab is sitting nicely, my little finger, my thumb, behind my front legs. Now, whenever I cook a Chinese meal, I always have some sliced ginger, some matchsticks and some dices. So we always start with your slices. I've got lovely slices of ginger now, and so I'm going to move on to getting matchsticks of ginger. I'll keep some slices for a dish later on, but here I'm going to explain. A lot of people, for some reason, once you've got slices, sort of pile your ginger or whatever you're slicing up into one big tower. There's 2 problems with that. Firstly, your tower can topple over, and secondly, if it slips, then your finger's going to slip as well. It's much better to just sort of lay that in a line nice and flat, because then you can start to create that rocking motion of down and forwards. When you come backwards, leave the tip of your knife on the board and just lift at your wrist. Down and forwards, lift at your wrist, down and forwards, lift at your wrist. That's how we get matchsticks. So laid flat, matchsticks of ginger. So you can see now I've got these lovely thin, really, really thin matchsticks of ginger. And again, these are great for things like dipping sauces, whatever you want really. Or you can just throw it into a stir fry. So I'm going to just take those out to show you the different stages of my slicing technique. Once you've got your matchsticks, then you can turn those around and we can start to finely dice those matchsticks up. Now, this is where your crab kind of changes a little. It might start quite sort of close knit, like so. But over time, your crab becomes more like a little crab cage. And whatever's inside that cage should stay where it is. And that just helps you when you're dicing things up. So nice rocking motion, down and forwards, lift at your wrist, down and forwards, lift at your wrist. And the more relaxed you are, the better you'll be. Ideally, when you're slicing and dicing as fine as this, you wouldn't be talking to a camera. Now, when you're practicing, it's likely you probably won't get it quite as fine as that if you're not used to using your knife that quickly. So you'll probably have to go sort of a rough chop over the top, and that's fine. This is the first time I'm actually showing you guys how to chop it rather than slice into the bit of ginger. Slicing down and forwards, chopping, 3 fingers over the top, and just an up and down movement. Now, chopping is a lot less efficient than slicing. If you can slice something, always slice it. So I'm going to do exactly the same with the garlic, but there is a little trick with garlic. And that is, if you have a bit of water, you can just run it under the tap. But if I dip the garlic clove in a bit of water and then give it a bash, just take the tip of your garlic and you just flick it. Wow. And the reason for that, it just drops out because you get little droplets of water that sit over the waxy membrane of the garlic. That's why it slips out with that extra bit of water. So I'm going to finally dice the garlic in exactly the same way as I got to the ginger. Another little trick is that if you do have a little bowl of water nearby, with garlic it can get quite sticky. So if you just sort of dip your tip of your knife into the water and let that drip down, then when you're slicing into your garlic, it doesn't stick on your knife as easily. Now you can use that slicing technique with whatever style of knife or chef knife you have. Paring knives don't work. The tiny little knives, they just don't work with that. You know, so it has to be a large enough knife, 10, 15, 20 centimeter knives. If you have a cleaver, the beauty of the cleaver is its surface area. So anything fibrous like a bit of ginger or even garlic or lemongrass or prawns even, you know, if they've got these sort of fibers intertwined, then you can use the surface area to really bash it. Now, if I put my ginger right in the middle of the board, if I bash that, I'll just wrap my knuckles, which won't be so nice. So what you want to do is you bring your piece of ginger closer to the edge of the board, and then just hold my hand to the left here and give it a good bash. And you can see with 1 or 2 bashes that it just opens all those fibers up. That makes it then much easier to do a very rough chop of that ginger, which pretty much takes you to the same place as my finely diced ginger earlier on. But it's always good to start with your core technique and your basics. Spring onion next. I always say that spring onion is the best thing to teach you your knife skills. Firstly, because it's very cheap, so you can buy lots of them and just keep practicing. But secondly, because if you don't sort of push down and forwards and slice through with your knife and you just chop, then you won't actually slice through properly. The reason why chopping doesn't quite work is it kind of just bruises the spring onion and it keeps it together. I'm kind of exaggerating that a bit, but you can see that it's kind of stuck together. Whereas if I push down and forwards, and it will guarantee that it slices through the spring onion. This is all technique, not about force. So Down and forwards, lift at your wrist, down and forwards, lift at your wrist, down and forwards, lift at your wrist. And you get nice, fine rings of spring onion. The next thing about spring onion, which is great sort of knife skills teaching, is this is the first time that you'll really notice your crab moving. And what it does is it moves and pushes your spring onion forwards into the knife. So when you're pushing your spring onion forward, it's actually the back leg, so your little finger and thumb that do most of the work. They kind of gather back and then push forwards. The next slicing technique for your spring onion I'm going to show you is how we get those nice fine strands of spring onion. The easiest way to get fine strands of spring onion is to cut the spring onion in half. And when you're doing that, just go careful not to hurt yourself, and your little finger and thumb always behind your middle fingers, your front legs. So that just helps to guide the knife and cut that in half. Once it's in half, don't put your spring onion flat side down, because you'll put a lot of pressure on that and the layers will fall out. It's actually better to cut your spring onion inside up. And then you can go nice and slowly, down and forwards, lift at your wrist, down and forwards, lift at your wrist, and you get nice fine strands of spring onion. I'm going to do that more in real time now. Down and forwards, lift at your wrist, down and forwards, lift at your wrist. And then you can see how fine these strands of spring onion really are. I'm using all the core ingredients of Chinese cooking to show how finely tuned you can get your knife skills. The last thing I've got here is a bit of chili. Now, there's so many different ways you can deal with your chili. If you wanted just rings of chili, then you just go down and forwards, lift at your wrist, and go around the whole thing. But I'm going for finely chopped bits of chilies I'm going to make a nice chili oil out of all these finely diced ingredients. So it's the first time I'm holding my knife horizontally rather than perpendicular to my board. So this is where it might get a little bit more scary, because you're kind of cutting towards your hand. The first things first is, if you make small sort of tooth size slices, you're not going to cut anything. You need long stroking movements with your knife. So nice long stroking movements, and you can see that those long movements make it easy to go around. You can see where my crab's going. My crab is always as far away from the knife as I possibly can be, just to make sure that I'm safe. When I get to the end, I'm just pushing my thumb down slightly so that I feel safe that I'm going towards my board, not my hand. At the very end, I change the stance of my crab to just sit on top of my chili, like so. And then I should, in theory, be able to slice it in half. So the control of this horizontal slicing actually comes mainly from your thumb and index finger, where if your thumb was up here, you'd struggle to have the same control. But with it sitting just over the bottom edge of my blade, then it gives me a little bit more control to just maneuver the knife gently to give that slight angle so I don't cut myself. Now, I don't mind actually keeping the seeds in for this. I'm going to make a chili oil, but if you want to know how to de-seed with your knife, that's where the tip of your knife comes into play. So just holding the chili with your crab on one end, and then just running that tip along the chili allows you to keep it whole, but take out that seed and any membrane. So if you wanted to use your chili for nice long strips, you could then flatten your chili out with your knife and then get nice fine lengths of chili, like so. The rest of the chilies I'm going to finely chop to make a quick chili oil. And much like your spring onion, it's always best to cut into chilies or peppers with your skin side down, because the skin has that waxy membrane which protects it from being cut as easily. So I'm going to fry this into a nice chili oil for a good sort of 5-10 minutes or so. So I don't need to go too fine with it, but if you did want to go as fine as your ginger and garlic, then just go once over it again once you turn it around. I can show you that now. Turn that around and then a rough chop over the top. Or you could do lengths of chili and finely dice the other way. As you can see, from just 4 simple base ingredients, I've shown you lots of different ways of dealing with your preparation. So slices, matchsticks, fine dices, and how we get there with your knife. One knife, that's all you need. I'm going to make a really simple chili oil with these finely chopped up ingredients now. So I'm going for a Sichuanese style chili oil here. So I'm going to start it off with a few dry ingredients and flavour the oil with those, sieve them out, and then add all my fresh ingredients to give it that sort of punch from the chili, ginger and garlic. You want a fair amount of oil in the base of your pan, and you want it on a medium heat. I've got some black cardamom here, Sichuan peppercorns. Be quite liberal with this. You're going to get a lot of flavour out of that. Some star anise, serious cinnamon bark there, and then some fennel seeds. You're going to temper those spices, get as much sort of aroma out of them as you can. Take about 2 or 3 minutes on a medium heat to get that oil flavoured nicely before I then sieve it through. Now I'm just going to sieve that oil through. I don't mind if there's a little bit of sediment from any crushed or slightly crushed Sichuan peppercorns in there. Just want to take out all the big bits and bring that oil back into the pan. And then from here it's really simple. Medium heat, and we're going to get your ginger, garlic and spring onion into that hot oil. If you wanted to add a bit of onion to this as well, absolutely fine. Just want a good base flavour. Smells absolutely delicious, and it's the type of chili oil that will go great with some soup noodles or some rice, anything really. About a minute or 2 to cook that through before you add your chili. Chili in. You could also use some dried red chili flakes in this if you wish. But I'm just going to stew that for about 10 minutes or so on a medium heat. Halfway through, I'll start to add some mustard, hoisin sauce, and some light and dark soy to give it that more sort of jammy, slightly darker red colour. So once everything starts to brown nicely, then you want to start getting your sauces in. So I've got a bit of mustard here, a teaspoon or so of mustard, about a tablespoon of hoisin sauce, and then some light and dark soy sauce to balance out that sweetness with some savoury and salty flavour. A couple of spoons of each. That good mix through. And what you want to do is cook it to a point where most of that extra moisture has come out and it's started to just sort of dry out a little again. And the chili, garlic, ginger mix then becomes more of a paste sitting underneath the oil. You'll notice the difference just in the sound from the sizzling in the oil, that most of that moisture has come out. At that point, take it off the heat. Look at that. That caramelised chili, great for topping any dish. Ideally, you let that sit in a seal-tight container for 2 or 3 days and all that flavour will really infuse into the oil. So now you know how to slice and dice and finely chop the Chinese way. If you like this video and you want to learn more about the details of Asian cooking, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like away.